Hey, Edge, breakaway. You guys asked us questions the other week, and you asked us so many that we couldn't.
I made a question mark.
What did you write down? What are those?
You asked us so many that we couldn't answer them all in one weekend. So what we wanted to do was to take some time and answer them here on YouTube. We want you to keep asking questions so that Kelsey can answer them. So when you have more questions, which we hope asking questions and getting answers leads you to more questions. So as you have more questions, we want you to ask them to us. DM us on Instagram or put it in the
Comments.
So we're gonna go through and we're gonna read one of your questions and try to answer it as the best that we can. And if we're wrong, Kelsey's gonna tell us.
Sounds good. The pressure is on.
Yeah.
Under pressure.
All right. It says, how do we
Can you read that?
Shut up.
Today, Junior.
Is it too far away?
No, my eyes are still fuzzy from traffic this morning. How do we be Jesus to someone that rejected him, made fun of you for your faith, and then hurt you? So we're gonna break down that question into the three different parts it is, right? How do we be Jesus to someone that rejected him, made fun of you for your faith, and then hurt you? Now, Jesus actually experienced this at one point, and so did his disciples. Like right after, only a couple of months after they started following him, and they got to see Jesus teach, they got to hear what he would say to people and the stories that he would tell and how he would interact with them. He actually sent them out into pairs. That'd be like saying, hey, Kelsey, you grab Lexi from Edge. You and Lexi, you guys are gonna take off and you're gonna go out to Grand Rapids on your own. And
My Grand Rapids.
I don't know, I was trying to think of a Michigan town. Definitely not gonna say like Toledo or something. So how would you feel being sent off to a city to be a lone missionary with another person?
Well, I mean, I guess I would feel more comfortable if there was more people. It would be kind of scary, especially when you're being sent off somewhere if it's not familiar to you or it just seems far away and you're just like, I'm dropping everything and just going. That's scary. I guess the only comfort would be that you have one more person with you.
Yeah. There's this thing that he said to them, though, which I always found pretty interesting. He gave them instructions on what to do, on where to stay, what to bring with them, which really wasn't much. And he said, if you run into a situation where people don't receive what you have to give, then he told them literally, shake the dust off your feet as you leave. Just like that.
Just like that.
Now, I'm not saying you should walk around like kicking dust off your feet when people don't agree with you on your faith. But what I would say is, you know what? The Spirit is the one who leads us to him. And if someone isn't quite ready for it, it's okay. It doesn't mean we don't hang with them. It doesn't mean we don't talk with them. But we can tell when someone is a person of peace. And when they say they don't really want what we have, that's totally fine. We can still love them in a different way. Also, Jesus had the example of the parable of the sower and the seeds. Can you read that, Sam? I can read it.
Sure can.
I can, I promise.
I said, reading is good.
It says this. It says, that same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him, and they got into... This is actually harder to read.
I told you.
Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood up on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed, and as he was scattering seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell along rocky places, where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear.
And then he goes on to explain that this is a great picture of faith and truth. So when we hear what God has for us, not all of us have soil in our hearts that is ready to receive it. Or sometimes we might receive it and we believe it for a little while, we hold on to it for a bit, but the troubles in our lives might choke it out for a while. And I think we can be all these kinds of soils, or have all of these kinds of soils in our hearts at different times. So just think of that when you come across people who don't want to share your faith, or think differently, or even speak negatively about it. And think about their hearts as being maybe a rocky kind of soil, something that's not ready to receive it. But above all, there's this verse, which I love this verse, and I love it actually in the King James Version, which is like the really old Middle English version of the Bible. But it says this in Matthew 5:44, but I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. So Jesus was talking about that idea of an eye for an eye, and that's sometimes how we can live. What you do to me, I'm going to do right back to you. But instead, he says that our answer to people who are unkind to us, or who may have some words towards us that we don't really like, or they may make fun of our faith. Remember, he says that it's our job to still love them, our job to serve them. It's our job to bless them and say good things to them, and then also to pray for them no matter what they do to us. So if we keep that in mind, I think we'll have the kind of response that Jesus is asking of us.
So this was a question from one of our middle school students. They asked, why did Adam and Eve eat the fruit? Referring to the fruit, the forbidden fruit, the Apple iPhone fruit. Why did Adam and Eve eat the fruit? Would things be different if they hadn't? Super interesting question. Yeah. It was really good. Made us think a good amount just about that story and what really happened in the garden, and then what would happen from there, right? Looking at the story in Genesis 3, this is where the serpent shows up at the tree of life. Is that what it's called? I don't know.
Tree of knowledge, good and evil.
Good and evil.
Sam doesn't read the Bible.
So Eve was in the garden in this story in Genesis 3, and the serpent shows up to her in the tree and essentially tempts her into taking the fruit.
Trust in me.
The way that he does that is by telling her that surely, even though God told her that she would die if she ate from that tree, he said, surely you won't die. Actually, you'll be able to know what is good and what is evil, just like God. So that's why God doesn't want you to eat from the... So the question, why did Adam and Eve eat the fruit? Eve ate it because the serpent told her that it would be good, and being able to know good and evil sounded good to her in that moment. I think there's probably a lot of times where things sound good to us at a time that maybe aren't good for us in the long run, that we take a bite of. That's why she takes the fruit. But then she gives it to Adam, who the scripture says was there with her. Now the question, would things be different if they hadn't taken the fruit? Because this is kind of the moment, even in a lot of Bibles, it gives the header of the fall, which means the fall of man, where sin kind of enters into the world, and temptation, this darkness kind of enters into the world. So if they hadn't eaten the fruit, would we all be totally fine? Would we be living perfect lives? Could even be a question. My response when I think about that is no. Reason being, evil and darkness is kind of a part of our world. None of us are perfect. So my guess would be Cain and Abel at some point would have eaten the fruit. And if they hadn't, somebody right after them would. Even if it's not right in this moment, odds are that at some point Adam and Eve would have eaten the fruit and sin would have entered into the world. So as interesting as the question is to kind of think about, like, would things be different if they hadn't eaten the fruit? I don't think so.
I think one of the most powerful parts of the story of Adam and Eve is how we can see ourselves in that every day. Because essentially what happens to them is what I do every day. It's what you do every day. We face that every day with the serpent, right? Coming in and tempting us to do and choose to know what is good and what is bad, rather than just knowing what is good. So we face that temptation to choose between good and evil every single day. We face that fruit every single day, and we have that choice every single day, what we're going to live in just the good of God and his kingdom and his choice, or in knowing both good and evil and making our own choice. All right, well, thanks for sending us your questions. We hope that you have more now, and if you have answers to them, you want to answer each other's questions or what you think, or you want to challenge what we've said here and you want to create a dialogue, awesome, let's do that. That's what this is meant for. So always pursue wisdom, always keep thinking. Don't check your mind at the door. Being a follower of Jesus, we're supposed to use our heads and our hearts. So keep asking questions and we will dive into these together. I'm cutting all this out. Don't hang your head at the door, or check your
mind.
How do you hang your head at the door?
That sounds painful.
Hang your head at the door.
There's a raver down in the preschool right now.
Jalen and
It's club day.